Greetings and welcome back to the channel. Today we're on part 2 of a two-part series with Weaviate, an AI-powered vector database that can integrate with chatgpt to serve as an AI agent which would research your own data before answering any prompts. So please like, share, and subscribe everyone, and reach out to me in the comment section for any help, tips, and suggestions. So once again, what is Weaviate? Vector database, AI, database, and dimensions come together, right? So in the real world, we have 3 dimensions. In a vector database, there is over 10,000 dimensions, and I get in depth with this in the first part of this series, so please watch that. Essentially, what's happening is that an image like this, if it gets put into that database, the object gets stored, but it also gets vectorized. So brightness is a dimension. Brightness would be a column, right? And here this image is not that very bright, so it will score closer to 0. But in the technology column, if we're looking for something for technology related to software, it will score very high, right? So that's an overview. Please watch part 1 if you want to better understand. So with that, let's try to get right into the tutorial here. So what I would like to do is I would like to install the dependencies, and I believe I have those dependencies set up here. If not, go ahead, press enter while you wait. And now what I want to make sure I do is I want to open up a Weaviate account at this URL, right? Then I want to open up a Cohere account and grab its API key, right? So with Weaviate, I have to make a cluster. And then I also want to open up the ChatGPT account, and they're at capacity, but you can reach out to them, pretty sure. Right, and if anyone has difficulties with these 3, what you could do is ask ChatGPT or do a YouTube search on how to get the API keys, because we're going to need that for the next, right? So now what we want to do, after this, we want to set up our Weaviate manager. So we're going to get our init, manager.py, go grab our values here, code in, right? So that'll be our init. All these values will be passed over, and for run, right? Essentially, what we want to get all those values, the client URL, Weaviate from Weaviate, Cohere, the API key will go here, and then OpenAI key would go here. But I would do them for you, but for safety and security, I'm just gonna leave them like that. And then whenever anyone is doing tutorials, right? Anyone in the crowd is doing tutorials, that's how you want to do them. So when I have text here and then these double arrows, that means you have to put in the value that comes from Weaviate. Put in the value of the API key. Paste this whole thing with the actual right. Try to open these side market. Right, so now with that, we want to go ahead and create our data schema. A lot of code right here. Go ahead and copy it. Let's go ahead and collapse it. Collapse it. Go into our manager. Collapse this. Right, and that's our database schema. Looks like it backticks in there. Right, and then it's complaining about tabs and spaces, something you generally don't want to see. Right, and then right, so there it is. So we kind of look at it, there's a lot going on here, right? Essentially, we need a vectorizer. So when this object comes into the vector database, right, the object gets stored, but we need to make a vector representation so that when search happens, right, you can search properly. We use this vectorizer to try to get that done, right? And then I think this is a LLM model that allows us to be multilingual. So if there's a multilingual search input, right, we will see that later in the course. But what we want to try to focus on is the properties that we kind of grab from our data set. We grab our text, our title, our URL, wiki ID, and then the views. And then these are vectors, right? These are dimensions, these are categories, these are classes that we search on, through our objects, and they go through values from 0 and right. So with that explanation, let us go ahead continue to create our database schema, right, which is going to be article, and then create that schema here. All right, so I want to zoom in, so I say Python run.py, and we look at that schema has been created, right? So now let's print out the schema. Let's try to see what that looks like, right? And it's basically going to be a replica, right? But I'll just leave that here, in a way. Right now, what we want to do, we want to go ahead and import this data into Weaviate. Like it's returning to the top everything. Right, and then this is our logic here. So essentially, right, we have a Parquet file, right, and then this is just another type of database file, right? When you have your SQL exports, right, it's a SQL dump. So think of this as something similar for all. So now we're going to put in our run.py to import all this Parquet data, and that's over, and there's also 100,000 rows in here. If you, what you essentially want to do is that we want this Parquet, right, in final. What you want to try to do is you want to, let's copy it to start for now. Okay, you could run this code. So let's import that data into Weaviate. And then this is going to take a bit. So I'll pause the video and then come back when it's done. Right, and then on a side note, while this loads, we kind of see that we get progress bar here, similar to what you will see in command line Python applications. Essentially, that all comes from the TQDM module, right? I'm not sure what it stands for, right? But all you would have to do, you pass in your iterable, whether that be a list or any type of sequence type, and then you want to get the length of that, right? You kind of see that we're grabbing 100 objects, 10,000, not 100, but 10,000 objects from this Parquet file, right? Don't get confused with the 10,000 dimensions, right? These are objects get stored, and now each of these objects gets vectorized to 10,000 different, right? So that's 10,000 raised to the power of. Continue to wait for. Then another important thing is that we get to see how long it takes, so that if you know that you have to perform a similar operation in the future, right, you can consider this. Minutes, seconds, 2 minutes. We're almost there. All right, so here I just put in some information about the data frame, right? Because we're leveraging pattern data frames to load our information into, right? But now we also want to try to tell. Then from there, right? Yeah. So this reads into our data frame right here. Read Parquet file into that data frame, and then from the data frame it goes into Weaviate. Now we see that we have 10,000 items, right? Because we queried for the count, and we know that our 10,000 objects here Weaviate. So now let us try to perform. Right. So now this is a keyword search. Kind of add this in, and basically it's looking for. So if you remember what I said, those values between 0 and 1, right? If you kind of look at the search, right, dog, right, dog is going to be a vector. Dog likes, right? So that's going to be a vector, right? So we perform that keyword search, right? We want to come up with the results that mostly are related to, right? And we see according to these wiki articles in here, right? It pulls up the wiki articles that have that keyword search of dog, right? And then basically what essentially we want to do here, like article, we get the article, but we want to look at the title, text, sticky ID. So if I remove this, and hopefully my prediction's right, then it'll probably reduce less related items, or I think this is what it returns. I think this search happens, it gets vectorized, and then these are the details um that we need to that we would like back. Right? So there's that. So that's a keyword search. Then there's search. This is like a general prompt. Don't let semantic search throw you off. This is a general prompt that's taken. So you just copy the code here, paste it in, and now let us copy this. Now multilingual that we were discussing earlier, we're going to see it. We're going to see it play out in this next one, right? So try to figure out what languages are these, right? Ask ChatGPT which languages are these. Try to figure out what it's asking, right? All right, good. So one by one, let's try to break it down one by one. We search for the cutest animals. If we kind of these two out, we kind of search for the cutest animals, right? So we get some vector information, right? We get the URL, and then we get a piece of text from it, right? And then we get bird, we get some vector information, right? And we get some additional text. If you try to take a closer look, right? Okay, so this additional, right? That's going to be the vector. But I don't want to delve too deep into that right now. I think what it is for you, the non-AI developer, full stack developer, you want to just grab the information you need, and I want so that Weaviate could. So trying to point out that cat, bird, and dog, right, with a limit of 3, right, those are the 3 cutest. And now a programming language used for machine learning, Python came up as 1. CPU, not exactly correct, right? So a vector database did do the search based on what's in the database, but yeah, it's really not the CPU, GPU. I mean, if there's no GPU in there, I don't want to look, but CPU is kind of close. And then Python kind of came up again. Python should have been the first too, but it's not giving us something horrible, such as Java, right? Even though Java is fast, but it's really giving us good results. All right, so now we want to do a hybrid search, which is keyword and right. So essentially, what that means is that this keyword that's being passed in is also a semantic search, right? So the keyword is the dark night, and a semantic search is also the dark night. Well, here, so see what that looks like. Nothing too out of the ordinary. You expect to give us relatively the same answers, right, as before, as we would expect. Right, and then these are the results that we kind of get. So this is the query with the alpha of 0, and now this is a query with the alpha of 1. So try to look at the differences and try to see, right, what the difference is. So far I can see that the query with the alpha of 1 at a high level, right, I'm not reading through the text, is more natural, is more down to earth than the query with the alpha level of 0, right? So try to see if you can see what the difference with this alpha channel kind of does, right? So it's searching for the keyword. We can't really see an example, but just know that it's there, right? And then last but not least, I believe, is going to be a generative search. So this is where the ChatGPT gets leveraged, right, to look through the items in the database, then come up with an answer based on the items in the database. And then I think here it is, right? And now so basically I would like to write some interview questions, right? So now so let's take this first example, and I think the rest I could leave to everyone else's devices to try to play with. But this, if you kind of see here, this is a very, very generic query, very, very generic prompt, right? So write me some interview question, right? About what? That I can ask who? here is some information about it. So now what's going to happen is that a search is going to happen on the database according to famous basketball players, right? That's a concept. Those are the concepts. And then for each, right, what's going to happen, it's going to grab these three. Then for each, it's going to grab some interview questions from ChatGPT, and it's going to format it out in a way. And then what we will essentially do is that there's a lot of heavy formatting, but it's able to parse out those answers from ChatGPT and then give us back a result in a way. And let's see what that happens. Because using ChatGPT, if any of you guys have made API applications with ChatGPT, it's not good at returning proper JSON. This here is. Try to see what that looks like. Right, and now these are some good questions. So basically, right, there's things like Sir Donald Bradman, Ian Thorpe's swimming career, right? So nothing about Michael Phelps, right? So ChatGPT, right? The interview questions will probably go to the top, right? And if you kind of look at that, famous basketball players, not quite, right? Say famous sports players. Let's try to see if it will look right. ChatGPT, as we know it, will look for Michael Phelps, but it's given limited information, whatever is in the database. Now changing that prompt, let's try to see. We're generally going to get the same sports players, right? But let's see. Look, I think the point was they're not going to be the top sports players in them, right? So it's going to look through here. So I believe the previous prompt mentioned Michael Jordan, but we don't see that anywhere here. Try to turn it back to basketball players. Try to see if that's the case. I think Michael Jordan gets mentioned. Title articles. Right, so we kind of see we change the prompt. Now it's focused on Michael. So thanks for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, reach out to me in the comment section for any help, tips, and suggestions. And then in addition to that, we're also going to have the tutorial pasted in the video description. Thanks for watching, guys.